So there were a lot of schmoozers and people like hangers-on and people transactional friendships, people coming out of the woodwork. Oh, I always loved you guys. It's like, who are you? I was there first. Well, I don't remember you, but okay.
Nancy, you are my first two-timer on this show.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Not
Yes.
one, but two of me. All right.
Yes. And I enjoyed it so much the first time, as did the audience. Enjoyed it so much the first time that I'm excited to have you on again.
Well, I'm happy to be here. You know me. I really I could talk about myself for hours. So,
Well, you have some great stories to tell.
yeah, there's pretty never ending. I mean, you live long enough, you have even better stories to tell. So,
And you're probably, as we get older, we're more willing to tell them. And, right?
admit to stuff. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Admit to
confessions.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's right. It's like, why
That's
not?
it. That's right. What do I have to lose at this point? I could just tell the truth. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Last time we spoke, we were talking about Crazy on You,
Yeah.
and we were talking about the lyrics and how they stemmed from the times themselves, that it was a reflection of the tumult of the early 70s and the Vietnam War.
Right.
And today we're going to be talking everybody about Barracuda, another signature amazing song with Nancy slashing the guitar. And that song may be so timely today, but I don't want to jump the gun on it, but we'll talk about that.
Okay.
But Nancy, last time we spoke, which was over a year ago now, which is crazy.
Wow.
And what you were just about to go on tour with your sister.
Yeah.
And actually then I saw you. I was at Jazz Fest of 2024.
Oh.
And
Wow.
and I saw your set, and it was incredible. It
Oh.
was really wonderful to see you all in concert. And then I
Wow.
had tickets
Thank you.
for December show here in San Diego.
Yeah.
And of course, the tour wasn't happening then for health reasons.
Yeah.
And so, but the tour is on again, which is wonderful. So tell us a little bit about how your sister is doing.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to report, that she's looking good. She's feeling good. She sounds really good.
Yeah.
Modern science is a blessing. And, she had some cancer and now she does not. And she went through the chemo and she went through a bunch of the different infusion treatments and all of the stuff and various, amazing technology that they have now. And she's ready to go. It's been not quite a year, but we took the break. She dealt with it. It's like we're ready to get back on that bus. We're going in rehearsals in a few days. I'm rehearsing for the rehearsals now, So, and it's really cool because, we're not spring chickens, but we know what we're doing on a stage, and so.
Oh, you know what you're doing.
Well,
I saw it.
We're
I
really
saw it in
raring
action.
to go. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no, you know what you're doing. You sounded great at New Orleans.
It's one of the coolest jobs you could ever have. I love the rock job, and while we can still do it, we've got to just enjoy every little morsel that we can.
When you are off, let's say you're done touring, and once the tour was called off last time, what is your daily routine? Do you pick up the guitar constantly? Or is it how do you your daily life? How does
That's
the
a good
music
question.
enter your life?
That's a really fun question. Writing the songs is where I've been since we had anticipated an entire year basically of touring, and then we went home for a good part of a year instead of what we expected to be doing. So I got busy with songs and making some new music, in hopes to maybe work on a Heart album again. So, I've got a solo career and I've got a career with Heart. So one of those things, but I'm really driven to be creative. I even have dreams and stuff about, here's this melody of a song that like I had a dream. Paul McCartney, he came to me in a dream because I was struggling with this verse area in this one song, and he gave me the melody for the verse area. So I woke up and I recorded it into my phone. I went next door to my studio and I tried it out, and it completely worked. It was like, wow, it's Paul McCartney's gifting me from another dimension, for this one song that I was, me and my friend Sue Ennis are working on for a friend who passed away. So there's a tribute to him that we're making a song for. It's going to be in Seattle in May. We're going to do a Charles R. Cross rock show for him. He's a rock writer who wrote our book and all that stuff. So anyway, long story short, I'm working on music one way or the other, but I don't actually practice playing guitar because
Yeah.
for me it's just like speaking or walking or cooking or
I bet.
exercising. If I have an idea, then I approach the guitar with my idea or a piano or something.
So even when it comes to the intricacies of Crazy on You and the opening of that song,
Yeah.
that's something that it just comes naturally to you, even if you put down your fingers for months.
Well, I've haven't been playing a lot of intricate stuff. I'm kind of more in the songwriting mode, which is more like
Yeah.
structure, like chord
Yeah.
progressions and melodies against chord progressions and ideas like that. But the intricate stuff comes like later. I think at the where you went to the jazz festival, I think that's where I completely blew the intro to Crazy on You. You did not notice that?
I would tell you if I
Oh my
knew, and
God, I
I
think I
know
just
the intro.
completely effed it up. And because the strings had been changed to a different gauge. And I was
Uh,
like, oh my God, I can't, this is a whole different action than I was used to playing that Crazy on
yeah.
You intricate thing before Crazy on You. And so I kind of really blew it, and I kind of had to go to the microphone and say, I'm sorry, that was the strings' fault. Everybody laughed. But at the same time, it was an interesting observation that people were like, wow, it's not pre recorded. Like she's actually making a mistake. And like when things kind of
That's rock and roll
aren't
right there.
exactly
That is rock
perfect,
and roll.
it's kind of
Yeah.
a really interesting, people go like, yeah. You're like, she goofed up and then kept going because that proves that it's really happening on a live stage, live music. So so I was kind of like, well, I guess that's one good thing about making mistakes. You don't have to beat yourself up about it because
Well, look,
people like it in a certain crazy way.
do you find that your lyrics are more compelling to you when you go with when you just kind of put it out there rather than think and keep rewriting and rewriting and rewriting?
Yeah, lyrics are tough. Like
Mm,
you wanna, if you're pissed off at someone, like with Barracuda, like
yeah,
that's how why
yeah,
Barracuda happened.
yeah.
And we're getting there, but you know, you but it's an interesting dynamic when you're trying to express yourself. You don't, I mean, it's really hard walking the line of being preachy, like, I know what I feel about you, and you should go jump up off the pier. Um,
Yeah.
and sometimes angry stuff really works, especially in a punk rock context, like railing against the big man or the suits or, you know, Big Brother, whatever. Um, but I think the most personal um, way, like you're talking to a friend or writing a love letter to someone personally, that
Hmm.
is the most um, sort of timeless way to approach expressing in a song. Paint those pictures in your song, like, well, I'm sitting in a bar, and um, I could be anyone in this bar. I've been everyone in this bar before, and I know all these people because they're all me, that kind of feeling.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
humanity again. So it's interesting, it's just it's really elusive, and especially the lyric writing part. I work with Sue Ennis, who's a longtime collaborator with me and my sister for Heart Songs for a long, and we still work on. We've been working on the Charlie Cross song and called Aftermath, and we really go round and round about what is said. What are you saying? Because you have to walk this careful tightrope about connotations that, like, or syrupy, sweet, sentimental
Mm,
stuff. You don't want
yeah.
to be too corny, but you don't want to be too preachy. You don't want to be, you want to be really honest, but not simplistic honest. You want to
Right.
be cool honest.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to even, describe, I guess, but
Yeah.
it's not the easiest part of creating. Just the songwriting part is lyrics.
You teased that you were writing some music for you yourself, but also potentially for a Heart album.
Right.
Is there a Heart album that we can expect, in the near future?
Well,
Is that the plan?
there's no way to make any announcement about that. Like,
Okay.
I went out in the press not before we were going out on the tour last time, and I was like, I was texting with all the band members and Anne, and going like,
Yeah.
we should do like acoustic, we should do an acoustic album, and everybody got real excited about it, and so I announced it, and they're like, wait a minute, we have to go on the road first, we can't do both of those things simultaneously.
Right.
But I
Right.
think that would be awesome to do an acoustic
I think
Heart
it'd be awesome too.
album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little Queen was your third album. Dreamboat Annie was 74 or 75, your first album. And so you had already had the smash from the beginning, the first album.
Yeah.
And you were, I'm not going to say kids, but going into the
Yeah, we
studio
were.
and all the songs that you had created up to that point in time.
Yeah.
How are you and your sister Anne, how are you different going into the studios on album number 3? How is your state of mind different? Did you feel pressure to
Huh.
succeed and to tell me about
Yeah.
that?
Well, I think album 1 was like really nerve wracking and scary, and so exciting to be able to make an album at all.
Yeah.
And that was the big, prize to be able to do that. And then the second album was embroiled with a bunch of legal rigmarole that made it really difficult and impossible. So it came out under duress in a stressful situation, but it was a pretty good album nevertheless.
That was Magazine.
Magazine.
Yeah.
And so the third album was really like our for real second album, and the way it felt to go in the studio with a bunch of these songs that were going to be on Magazine, but had to wait for Little Queen to actually be done in a real recording studio setting. Anyway, it's a long, boring story, but we were so happy, to get into another real, official album making, project with Little Queen, and it's again was like another concept. Like Dreamboat Annie was kind of a concept where there was a recurring motif and a theme that came back later, and just little musical, connective tissue throughout the album. And with Little Queen, we thought that would be great too, because we felt that, we're a band of gypsies. We'd been on the road a couple of years already, and it was a movable feast, and we took our wagons and our horses and our, rent-a-goats and rent-a-wagons, and so we rented the Elysian Park area with rented goats and a gypsy wagon and a bunch of costumery and archers and stuff, and we were writing about our gypsy era, and it was a really cool time in the band. We're really extremely inspired with mandolins and stuff because we've been influenced from the beginning by Led Zeppelin really a lot, and the
Mm-hmm.
Beatles and a lot of other influences. But because we were doing Battle of Evermore and I was getting into the mandolin, so we had a whole mandolin section of the album that was really cool. And we were, gypsies and, white witches and all that stuff. And so that album was really, really fun to make. And we were back in Seattle in our hometown while we made it. So we were at home for the most part of making that album. And with Barracuda, it was, a song that came together when we'd been in the out in the busy world of becoming really popular and getting gold records and stuff like that. So it was like a whole new world for us to kind of inhabit the rock star pose.
Yeah.
So so there were a lot of schmoozers and people like hangers on and people transactional friendships, people coming out of the woodwork. Oh, I always loved you guys.
Yeah.
It's like, who
I
are
bet.
you? I
I
was there
bet.
first. Well, I don't remember you, but okay. And, stuff like that. So that was kind of what spurred Barracuda like poked it into life, was that we were at some party, release party, I think, or something. And the guys in the satin jackets were all schmoozing and taking their cocaine. And we were not doing that then, but we did that later. But yeah, but speaking of
See, this
honesty,
is where the stories come out. Yeah.
yeah, right. So, but I mean, we were just pretty innocent, really,
Yeah.
for early 20s, and we were just getting started, and we had the tiger by the tail, and people were really like heavy schmoozing and trying to get all the most salacious details into the press about us that they could come up with. And that's where that happened. Was this guy said, "Hey, so Anne, how's your lover? How's..." And Anne goes, "Michael, he's right over there, he's great. Why?" He goes, "No, I mean your sister lover. Yeah." And so it was like the innuendo was really, it just wasn't true. So I mean, it would have been fine if it was true, if we were together as a couple, but we weren't. We both had boyfriends, and it just wasn't our, way of sexuality then. So, anyway, so
What a strange comment for that person
oh,
to.
like,
It's
yeah, like,
bizarre.
because we had our first album had two of us like looking with touching bare shoulders, looking into
Yeah.
the lens. I
Yeah.
guess, I don't know.
They're sisters.
That would be like pretty
They're
tame for these
sisters.
days.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Sisters hug each other. It's okay.
right, yeah.
You know.
But with bare shoulders, I don't know. But anyway, so
This guy
Anne got,
probably, in some weird, freaky way, he thought he was being funny, I guess. But
yeah, just like wink, wink, nudge, nudge,
yeah,
ha,
what?
ha,
Okay,
hardy,
yeah,
har, har.
yeah.
So, get it? The innuendo. And so she was like really pissed off about it. And so she kind of left, she turned on her boot heel and she, stormed away from the room and went up to the hotel room and just, wrote the words to Barracuda in their entirety. And
That's amazing.
she's really good with lyrics. And so so then, not long after that, when we were sound checking with Roger Fisher and Mike DeRozier and Steve Fossen and all those guys that were the lineup at the early first lineup of the band, they had Roger had a really cool riff, like a vibey riff that was very much was the Barracuda riff. So
Huh.
and at the time on the radio, there was a really cool, similar kind of a riff by Nazareth, where they were covering a Joni Mitchell song, "This Flight Tonight," It was like it had the same
Yeah.
groove, and but I think Barracuda kind of blew it out of the water. It's just one of the more iconic, and the sound of the guitar is so analog. It's so good. Anyway,
Yeah.
so it came together pretty quickly, and I kind of had I kind of was able to get the bridge idea kind of locked in there, and it all just came together pretty fast. But that signature riff is one of the icon. It's the iconography of rock. It's in the pantheon, I guess you'd say.
It is.
It really
That riff is
is.
absolutely in the
It's so
pantheon.
good. It's a just. And when we were doing that, we were making that album. We had a deadline. We had to, all stay at the studio. And there was no digital technology going
Yeah.
on then. Actually, it was right before that, and so the faders were not. There was no automation on the actual channels of the faders
Mm-hmm.
on the board
Mm-hmm.
itself. So when you would lay the song onto the 2-inch tape, when you're making your mix from the master onto the tape, the final mix had to be live. You had to perform the mix live to tape after you played it and all the parts were down, and you've decided which take was the take. So in its entirety, it was done all the way through with everybody playing at the same time. If you
Wow.
could imagine, if there was one half of a song that we loved more than the other, we would take a physical tape and splice it with a razor blade and do the splice it together thing with the actual master tape, the physical
It's
tape.
amazing.
And
Yeah.
then you lay it over to the mixtape. So anyway, it was really hands-on. And so at the end of Barracuda, everyone was standing at the console during the da 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 da, and it goes around, I think, five times or something. And at the end, we wanted it to peg all of the VU meters. Like it should start where the track, the level of the track, but for the very end, the last 5 bars or whatever it is, 7 or 5 bars, an uneven amount on purpose. Everybody pushed all the faders, the master faders, and all the parts, all the faders. We wanted to blow the board up, So we just wanted to peg the meters and have everything just go off the chart loud, and then it stops on an abrupt stop at the very end. So you could feel that, like even after it was mastered in the master lab, the volume stayed relatively in control compared to the rest of the song, unlike what we wanted it to do. but there are standards in radio airplay and stuff like that had to be followed. And there all the compressors that kind of come onto it later when the airplay of it all. So anyway, it's a lot of tech talk.
When you have several people and you're relying upon each other because you have to get it right together, that itself for a non-musician seems like it would be a pressure, almost like some pressure to do it. And it's like, damn, I fucked up on this. And, so, and then the other people in the band go, oh, are you kidding me? We had a great take going. But do you somehow, in a way, Nancy, do you miss some of that from those times?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I'm not sort of a memory lane kind of, oh, I wish it was the way it used to be.
Yeah.
Because there's so many great things about technology now that are so convenient. It's not quite so much skin in the game, but which is sometimes good, sometimes not. But I guess what I miss is the analog sound. Like when you hear tube microphones onto physical tape, recorded onto physical tape, especially with acoustic instruments and vocals. You really can feel and hear and what we've all listened to our phones so much this
Mm,
last since technology went so digital,
yeah.
and cell phones are miraculous. You know, they're miracle inventions because we could carry our little offices around and we can make songs happen and we can do all kinds of stuff. But the actual effort of getting something to physically onto physical tape through um, you know mirrors and magnets, basically. It's
Yeah.
really uh, there's a beautiful thickness about it when you listen to like early Elvis Presley recordings. You can hear the tubes in the microphones, and you can hear the walls in the rooms, the wooden wall in the room. When and the amplifiers kind of crackling. With the amps and the tubes and everything going on in the sound. That's what Barracuda has going for it too. The guitar sound, it's so tubular, man. It's tubular.
Yeah. Well, so it's just on that point, it's more akin to being in a bar or a
Yeah.
venue listening to heart,
Well,
listening to you.
it's a live in the room feeling. Yeah, it totally is. You know, um, it's like you're there. It's not an arm's length removed by a bunch of digital, zeros and ones in between you and your
Right.
ears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a couple things then. So with Barracuda, it was the lyrics that came first, and they were inspired by
Yeah.
that insane guy
The
who
slime
said
ball.
these,
Yeah.
yeah, this slime ball
The
guy who
slime ball
said these
guy.
things. And when we first spoke about Crazy on You, and you were telling me that we were discussing the fact that what's old is new again. Which so back then we had the
Yeah.
tumult that was going on with Vietnam and all the unrest and
Yeah.
dissension internally, and how Crazy on You kind of fits with the times again.
Yeah.
And then Barracuda, which, by the way, what an interesting thing for Anne to come up with, because
Yeah.
it so encapsulates what the way you describe this guy. And so but it's not an obvious word. Barracuda is not an
Yeah.
obvious word, so it's
Well,
interesting.
it's a
But
different way of saying, he's a shark, you know.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
another way to say shark, really,
yeah.
and but like an ugly fish with big teeth that's just gonna, a bottom feeder kind of idea,
So do
just
you think there's any resonance to these times with that
oh,
with that
completely. I
song?
mean, there's as long as I've been around, which is getting up there, and it's interesting how things do change for the better, and there's a lot more. Change takes forever, but change happens gradually. It takes longer than you want it to take. You know, like with a song like Barracuda, it's sort of railing against male chauvinism, obviously, in the culture, and the era that we came out of, it was a lot more problematic that way for women, to be taken
Hmm.
seriously and
Hmm.
to gain the respect in the boys' club of being, confident leaders inside a rock band. So uh, it it's but then just in our time since then, it's been, well, there's the Me Too movement, that came out, and a whole bunch of guys got trashed by a whole bunch of women that finally told their stories, and that was really a good, important thing culturally to see happen. Although I think it actually backfired and they overcorrected, just like any bandwagon, it kind of goes too far, and then a bunch of really cool guys got sort of trashed unnecessarily, and it's just like the bandwagon effect usually goes further than in the culture that necessarily needs to go. And all of the sensationalism of everything gets to be more important than the actual meat and potatoes of what's happening in our world. So,
Yeah.
you know, the the showboat, sensational, technologically advanced publicity machine has become really uh, in control of a lot of our perception, which is
Yep.
really, that's, you know, doesn't help us as people in the world at all. It's really something to be really uh, careful with. Information gets really distorted now, and it's advertised, and it appear, and now AI is going to make it even harder to figure out what's real, what's really happening, what you're really seeing, what you really want to believe or not believe. Um, but I think culturally, you know, the constant thing is creative, artistic expression that connects, that connects honestly, is an honest connection between human to human, which is is a lifesaver in our times.
Yeah. For
The
sure.
song
For
can
sure.
talk and tell you the truth, you know,
Yeah.
probably not the news.
Well, certainly in these, let's face it, these times with it where there's so much division, um, barracudas are being, in my view, are being elevated at this point,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
this is where again
The boys club is
we
back with a vengeance.
yes,
Yeah.
we need Nancy and Ann Wilson to
we
come
need
back and
more.
kind of bring back some. We need
We
more
need
Barracuda songs.
we need more Baby Lestrange. We need more
Yeah,
Dreamboat Annies. We need more Little Queens out there. Yeah, I agree.
yeah, no,
We're gonna do
it's
our
great.
darndest.
Yeah, for sure. And so once, and then just to end the note on your third album and with Barracuda, you had already become, and you were still, like you said, you were young 20s when you were at this point,
Yeah,
which is incredible. You're on album number 3 and you're still in your early 20s.
yeah,
So did Little Queen change the trajectory even more of where you were before going into the studio? Did it change your
yes,
life even more?
totally. Um, yeah, I mean, it kind of stylistically, you know, morphed a lot of the like a lot of girl fans started dressing
Mm-hmm.
like little queens, and a lot of lace
Mm-hmm.
gloves, and you know,
Yeah.
the fashion of it is the fun part, you know, is the fashion part. And um, I think it it just kind of gives you, it sort of gives you permission to be different for men and women, you know. If you love music and you take it, you wear the clothes like it, and you're kind of part of the clan, and you become a gypsy, you know, in your own way of thinking, against the grain, against what, you know, you're told to believe, or what, you know, you're a little bit left of center or off center somehow, or right of center, whichever. But anyway, I just think it's cool the way rock music, um, you know, the lifespan of any rock band is about 5 to 8 years. And we've survived a couple of different lifespans, because, like, the Little Queen and Dog and Butterfly era, from Dreamboat Annie to after Dog and Butterfly, that was kind of the first lifespan of the band. And like, you see a band like U2, about 5 years, they're like the coolest thing on the planet. Then everybody's like, oh, they're not so cool anymore. But then, like, a couple of years that go by, and then they're back, and they did amazing. It's a Beautiful Day, and they did all this other amazing stuff, and they're back, and you know, there's lifespans that are attached. If you have any kind of longevity, if you're lucky to have any longevity, you adapt, and the the art itself mutates towards to what the culture needs, you know. So because the culture is hungry, you know, for
Mm.
information and for fashion and for um, you know, just gratification, of the way music sounds and the way art looks and the way it feels and all the things that art gives us. Um, so, we all go through
Yeah.
our phases with it and lifespans of it. And uh, that's one of the greatest things about it. It's always changing and we're always growing with it, learning with it, and changing with it. So nothing stays the same.
It's the great Nancy Wilson
Oh,
for
thank you
round
so
two on the story
much.
behind the song. And Nancy, really, really enjoyed it as always. And
Always
you're
love talking
delightful.
to
And
you. Thanks for putting me on again.
it will be fun to see you when you come around again. Southern California, we're looking forward
Yeah,
to it.
we're heading your way.